I don't know if I'm just making something up in my head. This feels a little bit like a new season starting tonight to me. Am I making that up?
No, and I think I know where you're going, and I don't dislike it, because if you think about where they are, 60 down, 22 to go, you're the 10 seed, and it's a little bit like the pre-playoffs, because you're going to be in the play-in, barring an absolute collapse, unlike one we've never seen before, and even if you totally collapse, you probably could still get the 10, based on San Antonio, a couple of Utahs, and a Portland.
They're in the play-in.
With that as the backdrop, 22 to go, 10 home, 12 road. It does feel like the regular season is over, and then this is like the seeding season. So now you have a chance to seed. You'll be either 10, 9, 8, 7, maybe 6. I guess in a miracle you could catch the 5. You're not going to be 1 through 4. So let's just say anywhere between realistically 6 and 10. It's seeding season.
Yep.
So I like what you're saying about it feels like it's a new season.
Well,
you've got everybody back.
Right.
22 to go.
That's a big part of it.
Seeding season.
That's a big part of it. It's you came out of that road trip that had a lot of attention on it. You did what you needed to do. Remember, last week at this time, we were in full, like, oh, God, is Wiggins out for the year mode? Like, you made it through all that. And now you're sitting here going, okay, feels like a little bit of a fresh start. You are at full strength. You've got a handful of games at home. You have solidified, in my opinion, no worse than the play-in tournament. And so, sure, seeding season, but for me, it's not just seeding. There are other goals. I know that Steve Kerr has even said, like, stated goal, go get the 6th seed. And that's fine, but I'd like to, I don't know if they're stated goals, but I'd like to state some other things, which is that in the process of chasing that 6th seed, which I don't even know if you want, to be honest with you, like you do, but if you end up with the Nuggets, you don't.
Right.
So I don't know. I don't know how the whole thing's going to shake out at the top, and that affects what you want at the bottom. But in the process of going for whatever you're going to get, I think the Warriors need to prove to themselves and prove to their fans that there are some things that they can do that you will need to do if you're going to have any fun in the playoffs. And these are characteristics that I think one of them we've talked about some, one of them we haven't talked about really at all, and they're really starting to come into focus, which is that the Warriors do not beat really good teams, and for whatever reason, they are just very, very average at home. Very average at home, which is stunning. A 16-15 record, and that comes on the heels of playing pretty well at home. I know they lost to Denver, but their most recent homestand, they were 2-1. That means they went into that homestand literally with a 500 record at home. That's terrible.
Yeah.
That's not like, oh, hey, man. No, that's terrible. That is an awful, awful thing. You don't make the playoffs in the NBA with a 500 record at home. That's a lottery team. And so that's got to change. You want to go get the 7 or the 8 seed and then be like, cool, if you're the 7 or the 8 seed, you're guaranteed at least one. You know, if you win that first game, you're in. If you've got to play that second game, it's at home. That's got to be comfort zone. That's got to be like a 90% chance that you win that basketball game. And they haven't shown that yet for whatever reason. But this feels like a new group. You're now healthy. You're back. Take a deep breath. And so they need to see it at some point, and there's no better night than tonight.
Right, because tonight is an opponent that's actually tough and formidable, so you could check a number of boxes with a win tonight. It would be a rare victory against a top 4 team in either conference. You've only got 4 of those by my count, Mark, in as far as, Minnesota, OKC, Denver, the Clippers, and then on the other side, it's Boston, Milwaukee, Cleveland, and Orlando. Those wins have been few and far between. And you mentioned the home record, 16-15 at home. I do want to point out that they started out 1-6 this year at home. So they've been better at home since that dreadful opening, 15-9 since they opened up 1-6, which still 15-9 is not where we're used to seeing this team at home. normally they've been really good at home and they've been 500 on the road, but this year has been just about the opposite. They've been better on the road than they have been at home, but now's a chance over the final 10. If you rack up an 8-2 in these 10 games, 24-17 at home, that would be pretty good. That would feel a lot better than where they currently sit at 16-15.
So Warriors Wednesday brought to you by Freeman's Appliance. Trusted name since 1922. Visit freemansappliance.com today. Here's the other thing that I really am looking for. And I'm open to it looking a few different ways. I don't even necessarily have the answer to how I want it to look. I just want to, it's one of those things where you know it when you see it. Definition. That's going to be my word here for the rest of the year with the Warriors. I think they need definition. It needs to be a more defined group. We started this conversation with Fitz yesterday. What do you think? Who's the two? Who is it?
Oh, you asking me?
I'm asking you.
Who's the two?
Who's the two?
It's Kuminga.
Who is it? Who should it be?
It should be Andrew Wiggins. Klay Thompson's coming off the bench. It used to be Klay, but it's not Klay anymore. He's not starting. It should be Andrew Wiggins, but it is Jonathan Kuminga.
Interesting. It should be Andrew Wiggins.
When you were a championship team, it was Andrew Wiggins.
Right, but man.
That's what I mean it should be. And I look at Andrew, and I don't want to do a whole nother Andrew show. I look at Andrew and what he can be, and this has nothing to do with him being the number 1 overall pick and him being Air Canada or whatever his nickname is. That was Vince Carter. He has he's like the Maple Jordan is what he is. What it was. Forget Maple Jordan and all the rest of it. I look at what he was just 20 months ago when they won an NBA championship. He was the 2, and when he's your 2 playing like that, 17-16 in Game 4 of the NBA Finals, you're a very, very good team when he's that guy.
I agree.
You said, who should it be? To me, it should be him, but it's not. It's Kuminga.
Yeah. Okay. Let me say something about that, though, because especially with what has now happened to him 2 marches in a row, obviously last year very different than this year, although he stated yesterday that it's not necessarily all taken care of. We'll see. I do think it's almost an unfortunate byproduct of this whole conversation that we have reached a point of total obsession with who Andrew Wiggins was for 2 months. For 2 months. 2 months in a decade-long career.
Yeah.
And now holding him to that standard. To some people, that's fair. That's fine. To others, that's chasing ghosts. Whatever. When that happened, you can say Andrew Wiggins was the 2, but he wasn't. He wasn't the defined 2. If I were introducing you to the Warrior players and I was doing it by the pecking order, I would not have introduced Andrew Wiggins as the 2. That surprised us. We didn't see it coming. It might have been 2 or 3 series in before we even realized it. And even when we saw it, we didn't count on it to last because that's never been Andrew. Klay Thompson was the 2 years ago. Andrew Wiggins outplayed him for a playoffs, but Klay Thompson was the Warriors' 2. Whether he lived up to that, whatever. Do you know what I mean? Like, just because someone doesn't play up to snuff doesn't mean that the pecking order changes in a short sample size. So I would love for the Warriors to have a better sense of who they are, shorten the bench, know who people's roles are, and then if people outperform or underperform those roles, that's life, that happens. But that's kind of what I'm getting at. Klay Thompson was the 2. Andrew Wiggins just overperformed for 2 months.
Yeah, I don't know if I would say that because Klay missed, and I'm looking at it, he missed the first 38 games of that year. He was still coming back from injury. So he wasn't really the 2. He was a guy coming back, and
But playoff time, he's playing back-to-backs.
By the time he came...
By the time they got to the end of the year, I know there's no back-to-backs in the playoffs.
I don't know if I would say that he was the clear-cut 2 at that point. I think that, Andrew Wiggins certainly played his way into it. Klay played well in the playoffs. I'm not trying to discount what he did. He played really well in the playoffs, but...
What was the PPG?
For Klay in the playoffs?
And Andrew.
Klay averaged 19 in the playoffs. And Andrew averaged, I think, 16.5. Big numbers for Andrew. Yeah, 16.5.
Okay.
16.5.
Klay was the 2.
7.5 rebounds for Andrew.
There you go.
And playing defense against the best player.
Totally. He was two-way wigs. He started rebounding the ball.
That.
But
Clay was 4 rebounds a game.
Right, but what I'm talking about, I'm not talking about performance and stats even. I'm talking about pecking order.
Right.
Talking about options. You come down the floor on offense, who's option 1? Okay, that's not there. Who's option 2? Clay was the 2.
Clay shot 17 times a game. Andrew shot 14 times a game.
Clay was the 2.
Yeah, I think it was...
Andrew was the 3.
It was less clear-cut than it normally would be, or it's less clear-cut than it was previous to that when Clay was healthy. Although, when Clay was healthy before the 2 injuries, you had Kevin Durant, so Clay was the 3.
Very much so.
Steph and KD were the 1 and 1A, and then Clay was the 3. So
you're listening to 95.7 The Game, KGMZ FM and HD1 San Francisco, always live on the free Odyssey app, Twitch and YouTube, powered by First NorCal Credit Union. I would love to see that. I would love for the Warriors, when they play basketball, when I watch, I'd love to have a better idea of what their plan is. And it feels to me like the plan changes every 3 days.
Due to injury and due to ineffectiveness.
Understandable reasons.
I'm with you, though.
Yes,
I'm with you.
But for my wish, the Warriors won't do that. They would have health and an idea. You know, I mean, how many days are we removed from Steve Kerr having a press conference who's like, look, we love Moses, but he's out of the rotation. And then 4 days later, now Moses is starting.
Yeah.
And then 3 days later, now Moses is not starting, but he's in the rotation. It's like, my God. And I don't blame Steve for that. It's circumstantial, but it's not good. It's not good. I think you've got guys who don't know what's expected of them on a night-in and night-out basis. You've got guys who are frustrated with what's actually happening. And even just within offensive possessions, sometimes you start to see a little bit of a hesitation in terms of how to go about your business. You know, one of the things that's been great about Kuminga is more often than not, but not always, more often than not, he now feels the freedom.
Yes.
You're down. Go, dude. Go. But then, remember, like 2 weeks ago, there was this little stretch where it's like, and then now it's gone. And then it came back when Andrew left. Now, what happens? This is a big question for me tonight. Now Andrew's back.
Everybody's back,
so Kuminga, are you going to go, okay, I'll start to, spend some possessions hiding in the corner again? Or are we focused on you early in the shot clock, focused on Andrew late in the shot clock? Warrior basketball, when it was great, had a very specific idea of what they were going to do with the ball when they came down the floor. I watch this team. I see less of that now. I see less of that, and I don't think you can do that and win playoff-style basketball, and it might just damn well be the key to why they lose all their games against really good teams. When you watch the Nuggets, Yeah. Oh, my God, they have a clue. They're like, we're going to do this.
They're pecking order.
Oh, that's not there? We're going to do that. That's not there? Okay, there's Aaron Gordon. Boom, baseline, boop. Like, they've got a plan.
Yeah.
Warriors don't.
Well, it's been difficult to have a plan when you've had Clay ineffective and then now Clay to the bench, and Andrew's been in, and Andrew's been, sometimes a little off the ball and not super interested, and then he missed time. And Kuminga, I think, is a good case as far as, what you want from a young player. He hasn't had that real consistent, go ahead and get it done leash to where he can go out and play. But I think about the last 17 games, Kuminga's averaging 30 minutes a night. He's shooting it 14 times a game, over 50% from the floor, 52.6%, and he's getting you 18 points a night. So Kuminga has become the 2. Does that change now with Andrew Wiggins coming back, Clay coming off the bench? You got CP3. You've got everybody back now. So you don't, quote unquote, need Kuminga as much as you did out of just pure desperation when you didn't have those other guys. But Kuminga still is your 2. So does he get that license to go out there and shoot it 14 or so times? Or does he, to your point, does he start to feel a little bit of that veteran presence and think, maybe I need to defer a little bit to Clay when I'm on the court with Clay, and I need to make sure that Andrew gets his?
That's kind of what I'm getting at. Like,
no, you're not wrong, Mark.
Right.
You're not wrong.
And neither are you, but I think you're saying any of us who are saying he's the 2, we're saying that for 2 reasons. Number one, in a couple of recent months, he has been the second best scorer. And secondly, we kind of want him to be. But when you watch the game, do you feel the whole game like Kuminga's the 2? Or does it float?
It floats.
Floats all over the floor.
When Klay's on the court, it feels like Klay's the 1, at least in his own mind. And I'm not saying that to disrespect Klay because he's earned that. And the way Klay plays is Klay looks for his shot, and that's what makes Klay such a great player. So when Klay's out there, Klay's the 1, and everyone else is the 2. And that's just kind of the nature of the way he plays.
Oh, and part of that is now the bench role. So when he's out there, a lot of times it's the second unit, and he is the 1 of the second unit. But it's undefined. Last 2 games, Klay's been back in the starting lineup. Bobby Fitzgerald, we asked him yesterday, who's the 2?
If Jonathan Kuminga on a short mid-range post-up can be your second best option, then the Warriors have all kinds of chances in the playoffs. I don't know if it's there yet, but if I have all that perimeter shooting, but I can ISO or cross-match and put JK on somebody and let him bulldoze somebody to the rim when I need to in crunch time, now the Warriors look real different than they have in previous years.
So I look at that, and he's saying something similar to what you're saying, which is if the Warriors are going to do something in the playoffs, that's what they should strive for. Definition and put a name on it. Jonathan Kuminga. So... And look, a lot of us have not been calling for that and saying that for very long. You go back to before the turn of the calendar, and I had all kinds of reservations that Jonathan would get to this level, certainly not this quickly. I didn't see it. He's proven me wrong. That's awesome. That's awesome. That's great for the Warriors. But now, yeah, I do think you got to lean into it even a little bit more. The Warriors right now are a team that forces Steve Kerr to go on a nightly journey to find out who's doing what and when. And I think it's shown to be an almost impossible assignment.
But with these last 22, and I'm going to assume that Andrew Wiggins is able to compartmentalize and play these 22, which we don't know if he's going to need another break from the team. We won't even be able to entertain the if or the why. If it happens, it happens. But assuming that Andrew's able to play and stay healthy, as is everyone else, you do have an opportunity now to look at your team if you're Steve Kerr and say, all right, we've got everybody. This is what we're going to do. We're going to go with Steph and Brandon to start, with Andrew and Jonathan and Draymond. And here's how our bench rotation is going to work, all things created equally. We got GP2, CP3, and Klay. We know you're coming off. That's my 8. And the other 5 of you, well, it's going to be mix and match. It'll be Moses and Dario at times. Kavon's going to get his 10 minutes. TJD's going to get a shot at it. Maybe a little bit of Lester Quinones. Maybe a taste of ghee on the side. But I do think Steve now has the opportunity to look at it and say, this is what we're going to do. Klay, you're still going to come off the bench, and you're going to anchor the second unit with CP3 and GP2, and then we're going to mix and match everyone else.